Okay, so we need to talk about Osteichthyes reproduction. And this is just kind of an interesting article that was run in the San Francisco Chronicle a little while ago now. Goodness, 11 years ago now. Wow. So basically, here's what was happening. So people were living at the beach, okay? And every year at a certain time at night, they would be trying to sleep, and they just hear this really, really loud, like, humming noise. It was just like a perfect A flat, just humming all night, right? And it was loud. So can you imagine just like all night trying to sleep, and it's just like, like that's what was happening, okay? And so people were annoyed, having a hard time sleeping, and conspiracy theorists were like, oh, you know, it's the government trying to kill us all, and like people were coming up with all sorts of theories as to why there's this noise. Well, marine biologists went to stay at the beach and heard this noise and was like, oh, I know what that is. That's the mating call of a fish. Okay, so this fish called the plain fin midshipman actually makes this humming noise in order to attract females and to reproduce. So they can make noise. It's strange. And this is what it looks like right there. The plain fin midshipman making that awesome noise. So fish, when they reproduce, they are going to be doing external fertilization, which is different from chondrichthyes, right? Does chondrichthyes have internal or external fertilization? Internal, right? The males have claspers that they will use to transfer sperm to the female. In Osteichthyes, they have external fertilization. Okay, so what happens is they will release eggs and sperm like into the water column or onto a surface, and fertilization of the egg will happen outside of the mother's body, okay, either in the water column or on a surface. Okay, when this happens, so when they have they release those eggs and the sperm out into the water, it's called spawning. Okay, you have two different kinds of spawning. You have free spawning, which is when those gametes, the eggs and sperm, are just shed free into the water column and they're floating around and the egg gets fertilized and then develops into a baby. Okay, benthic spawning is when the females will go and like attach the eggs to a surface like a rock, like a piece of seagrass, like kelp, okay, something like that, and then the males will fertilize the eggs after that. Okay, so it's called benthic spawning because it's benthic on the bottom, right? So they'll spawn, and then after that you can have some behaviors that we didn't see in chondrichthyes. Is when chondrichthyes reproduce, right? Remember, like if they give live birth, the mothers actually have hormones that prevent them from eating their babies, and then they're all on their own once they hatch or whatever, right? So they're on their own. But in Osteichthyes, you actually have some behaviors where the parents will take care of the eggs and babies. So you can have like garters or bearers. Okay, so a garter will actually like keep watch over the eggs after they're laid and like try and fight off any predators that come around. So you know, like in Nemo, with the mom and the dad had like the eggs in that little spot, and then you know they're like, oh, so happy, and then the barracuda comes, and the mom's like, no, and like, yeah, the sad part of that movie. Okay, that they're guarding those eggs, right? So it's a guarding behavior to guard those eggs. Bears actually keep the fertilized eggs in either like a pouch on their body, like seahorses. So male seahorses have a pouch on their body where the females will lay the eggs and they'll fertilize the eggs and then develop inside this little pouch. And then when they're ready to hatch, they come out of that pouch. You also have like mouse brooders where they'll open their mouth and like they'll have like the eggs either like inside their mouth. Okay, and while they do that, they're not going to be eating, right? Because they've got the eggs inside their mouth. And they'll also do that a little bit after the eggs hatch. So like the babies will be out like, you know, feeding, and then if a predator comes, the mom or dad will open its mouth, and then the babies will all go back in and they'll close the mouth to keep the baby safe. So yeah, so you can have garters and you can have bearers. You can also have certain kinds that will actually attach the eggs like to a surface on their body, so like just on their abdomen or something like that, they'll just attach the eggs there rather than inside of a pouch. So there's your little daddy seahorses carrying around the little babies. Okay. All right. Do you remember way back in the beginning of last semester where we talked about sequential hermaphrodites? Yeah, where you change gender, you go from one gender to the other. Well, some fish will be sequential hermaphrodites. Okay? So they'll either start off as male and then switch and become female, or they'll start off as female and switch and become male. And they do that in order to increase their reproductive success. So increase how much they're able to reproduce. So we have special names for that. Protandry is when you go from a male to a female. Okay, so you start off life as a male and then become a female. And protogeny is when you start off life as a female and become a male later in life. All right. So the male becomes a female in protandry, and the female becomes a male in protogeny. Okay, so here's graphs, and here's what these mean. And you have these in your notes. So as you go to the right on this graph, on the x-axis, okay, that represents an increase in body size. So as you move farther to the right, you increase your body size. And then the y-axis on this graph represents reproductive success. So as you go up, you increase your reproductive success. Okay, so this one on the left is protandry, which means you're going to start off life as a male and then become a female. Okay, and so if you look at this, the dotted line represents the male, the pink line, solid line represents the female. If you start off life as a male, okay, in these types of fish, you start off life same body size as the female, okay, but your reproductive success is already greater than a female of the same size. Why? Well, it's a fact of life. Sperm are really easy to make, okay? It doesn't take a lot of energy to make sperm. So if you're small, okay, and you have a harder time finding food, okay, it's harder for you to get food, you have less energy, okay, and so you can still reproduce when you're small if you can produce sperm because they're easy to make. Does that make sense? Eggs are harder to produce, right, because you've got to create like a yolk in there for all this energy storage for the baby to nourish the baby so it can grow up and become hopefully an adult. And so it takes a lot more energy. So once you reach a certain body size, you're able to hunt more efficiently, right? Get food more efficiently, maybe compete better with others of your kind and get more food, and be able to produce the eggs. Okay, so if you start off life as a male, you already have a higher reproductive success. Okay, until you reach a certain body size, when it becomes beneficial to switch and become a female, then you switch and become a female, and the reproductive success increases even more. Does that make sense? So it's called protandry. The graph on the right is protogeny, and same kind of idea, body size, reproductive success. Okay, and again, you start off life as a female. Okay, and females and males, if they were born male, then they would have basically the same reproductive success when they're first hatched. Okay, so they would have basically the same. But if you notice, okay, as the body size increases, the females increase in reproductive success, right? Whereas the males, they remain like pretty much nothing, okay, until they reach a certain body size, and then it skyrockets for them. The reason for this is these types of fish, the males need to be big enough to guard like a spot, okay, then they've kind of got like their territory, and so when they reach a certain body size, they can guard that spot, and only the dominant male that's in that area, okay, and is guarding this area, mates. Okay, so if you're a small little fish, you can't compete with the larger males, so you don't get a mate until you reach a certain body size, and then you can start defending your territory. But if you start off life as a female, okay, and as your body size increases, your reproductive success also goes up. And so you reproduce all the time while you're female, you reach a certain size, switch and become a male. All right, so you increase this reproductive success that way. So you have more reproductive success if you switch than if you just start off life as one and stay that way. Yeah? Okay. Example of protandry, male to female, would be clownfish. I don't show this in Nemo, but when Nemo's mom died, Nemo's dad would have become Nemo's mom. So Marlin would have become Marlena. Yeah, but Disney's not going to do that. And then the protogeny would be a California sheep's head. So they start off life as female, and then they switch to male. And when they switch, they actually completely change what they look like. It's weird. They look like two different fish. So, crazy. Go. All right. You can also have some fish that will do reproductive migrations. So they will migrate in order to reproduce. We talked about this a little bit when we talked about lampreys. But catadromous fish are born and breed in saltwater, and then they live in freshwater as adults. So that means that they hatch in the ocean, and then they'll like swim up rivers when they are certain size, and they'll live their adult life in rivers. And then when it's time for them to reproduce, they swim back to the ocean. Okay. Anadromous is when they start off life in freshwater. So eggs are laid in freshwater, they hatch in freshwater, reach a certain size, move to the ocean, spend their entire adult life in the ocean, ready to reproduce, go back up the rivers. So like a salmon would do that. Okay. And the lamprey. We talked about lampreys. All right. Okay. So here's a picture to help you kind of see this. So here's the eggs in the ocean. Okay. Once they reach a certain size, they will move to the freshwater. Okay. So they live in freshwater as adults into their adult stage in their adult life, and then once they are ready to reproduce, they go back to the ocean. So you have certain kinds of freshwater eels that will do this. Okay. Here's your anadromous. So the little eggs start in freshwater, they hatch, they grow up, they become a certain size, they swim to the ocean, spend their adult life in the ocean, and they're ready to reproduce back to freshwater, like salmon. All right? So the top picture right there on the right, that's the smolt. So that's the size and like what the salmon will look like when they actually move down to the ocean. And then this is what they look like when they're going back up the river. Right? So certain kinds of salmon actually like switch colors when they're ready to reproduce. Yeah, they like turn this orangey red, like red color, and like their face changes shape, and like they look really ugly actually when they're ready to reproduce. So, yeah, it's strange. Okay, so that's how they reproduce. We're gonna just look at a couple behaviors because you need to know what these are and why they do these behaviors. So everybody knows what a school of fish is, correct? Yeah. Okay. A shoal is the same thing as a school of fish. So it's basically a big group of fish that are made up of like either the same type of fish, okay, or it can even be up to like two kinds of fish that will be all about the same age and about the same size and about the same shape. Okay. So typically one or two species, same age or shape or size. And so they're going to be in this big old group all swimming together, and they're going to use their lateral line and their sense of vision to like make sure that they're not just running into each other. Okay? So that's how they will stay consistent. So here's why they do it. It provides protection for them. So in this big giant group where all of the fish are the same size and the same like color and they pretty much all look the same, that big group of fish is really intimidating to a predator because it looks just like huge. And then B, it's really hard for a predator to just simply pick out one animal. So it provides protection for them because of that. It also helps to reduce the amount of energy that they have to swim. So how many of you know what drafting is? Okay. So have you heard like if it's super, super windy outside and you're driving on the freeway, you're supposed to get like right behind a semi? Have you heard of that before? Okay. They say that you get like right behind a semi because the semi kind of like cuts through the wind for you. And so as you're driving behind the semi, it's easier for you to drive because you don't have to face all of that wind because the semi is doing it for you. So you actually save gas because you're driving behind that semi. Now, granted, in order for that to actually work, you have to get really, really close to the semi, and that's dangerous, so don't do it. But that idea is drafting. Okay, so you're cutting through, something else is cutting through the air or water for you, and so you have to spend less energy to swim behind them. Okay, and so that's what fish do. And so they'll rotate like who's at the front too, right, to help to evenly share the load. It also helps to increase their reproductive success because if you're in a big group with a lot animals of your same type, all the same age, ready to reproduce at the same time, when you're ready to reproduce, they all are too, and you've got lots of partners to reproduce with. All right, so helps to increase reproductive success. Okay, and then we started this unit with the coelacanth, okay, which was a little poem by Ogden Nash about the coelacanth. And then I thought it was fitting to kind of like just give you a little bit more information about it. So the coelacanth is a living fossil. What we mean by that is we thought it was extinct, and then we actually found living specimens of it, so it's not extinct. It was discovered in 1938, okay, the first live specimen, or, well, it wasn't alive when they pulled it up, but that it was alive. And then it took us, like, gosh, 60 years or so before we pulled up another specimen. So the next one was in 1998 in Indonesia when we pulled up another specimen. And since then, we've been able to, like, film them in the wild. They're actually a pretty shy fish. They live down deep in the water, like 800 feet or so, and which is hard for people to get down there. And they are shy, and they're huge fish, like 5 feet, so they're big. So that's what they look like. Yeah, giant. Not the prettiest looking fish. And then here's your Save the Ocean action for the units. Save the ocean, yay. How many of you know what sustainable fishing is? Okay. Basically, there's certain fishing methods that are good because they allow for the fish to, you don't catch too many fish, and what you do is you leave enough fish behind that they can reproduce and replace themselves. And so you maintain the size of the stock of the fish. So like there's still fish for the next generation. And then other methods and other ways that we fish, you just like take all the fish, okay? And that's bad. And there's certain kinds of fish that are on the edge of extinction actually because we've done this. So the Monterey Bay Aquarium puts out this thing called the Seafood Watch Program. And they give out like cards, and if you get a card, it looks like this, but there's also an app for Android and the iPhone, so you can download the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch Program app. And when you go eat seafood, okay, when you're looking at the menu, you can pull up that app and see what on the menu is good to eat. So they give you like their best choices. So these are the ones that are sustainably caught and not in danger of, you know, fish extinction. And then good alternatives to that, and then the ones that you should really avoid. Okay, so like bluefin tuna, Atlantic cod, certain types of albacore and yellowfin tuna, certain kinds of salmon, certain kinds of shrimp. Okay, they are bad to eat. Okay, because of the way that they're caught. And bluefin tuna, I mean, like we're fishing a lot of bluefin tuna, so that's not looking good. And like Atlantic cod, before those became protected, we almost fished all of the Atlantic cod out of the Atlantic Ocean. It's crazy. So yeah, so you can go, if you've ever been to Lure, it's delicious. You can go and like see what's good to eat and what's not good to eat there on your little app on the iPhone. So be a smart shopper and pick sustainability, all right?